The drag slash. Drag slash out of the box comes with a decent base setting. Decent base setting on it. They try to get you pointed in the right direction right out of the box. But anyways, we'll start talking about there's 4 simple rules you have to keep in mind. Make one change at a time. I've gone in pits, made multiple changes, don't know what changed the car. But make one change at a time. You want to adjust everything in small increments. So make sure, say for instance, adjusting toe or preload on your shocks. You want to do everything in small increments, and then you need to give it time. So don't make a change, make one pass and say, okay, that's not working, I need to go back and change something back. No, make 2 passes, 3 passes, because generally one pass, you may not see it. That one pass, you can have other things go wrong. So 2-3 passes. You want to get as many passes on the small adjustments as possible, and keep notes. Keep notes of everything you do. Now, I don't know if the slash, I don't know if it has a if it comes with a setup sheet or anything, but if it doesn't, I can put a setup sheet together. I can just combine some that I've got and come out with the best setup sheet I can get for the slash. That way you can keep notes when you go to races. I always keep notes, because any changes I make, I just know that I keep the notes, so I know what my base setting was before and what my setting was after. If I make a change and then we don't get to run in our roll bars, we'll talk about that, Steven. In drag racing, I'm 100% for them, just because of how even it pulls down on the car. But so the very first thing we're going to talk about is front toe angle. The factory settings on the slash should have come out at 0 degrees. That meaning both are parallel to each other. But you got to know, as the car gets more time on it, your toe setting can change. It can require resetting, and especially your toe in. What generally tends to happen is you get slop, or you end up getting toe in, or you tag the wall. I mean, because you got to remember, these are metal links going into plastic cups. So any sudden jar generally shortens them. If you lengthen them out, it's because you caught your tire on something and pulled it out. But one thing, just keep in mind that as you get runs on it, keep watching your adjustment on your toe. I don't have my toe gauge handy, but A-Main sells one. It's a little black piece of plastic. It's pretty simple. Looks kind of like a ruler on the bottom, but it's got 2 fingers that stick up on it with a knob in the middle, so you can tighten it up and loosen it. And you measure your front toe on your front tires. But generally, one thing you can work with is you can set your front toe to where it has maybe 1 or 2 degrees of toe in. It's going to improve your stability down the track, but you've got to remember, when you start going toe in with your toe, it can make the vehicle turn a little bit quicker whenever you do make changes on your steering. But it also causes scrub, which is, it's just a rolling resistance that if you're already down on power, having issues with getting the car faster, it's just going to slow you down. But it will make the car more stable. If you've got a young driver or someone that's not familiar with it, that's newer, you know, it doesn't hurt to have a little toe in. That way it just makes it easier to drive the car, and it's more stable. Like I said, today I'm gonna kick you around on a couple pictures. This is a really good representation right here of your drag slash. Your front toe being at 0, this is how it should come out of the box. Now your rear toe, 2.5 degrees, we'll get to that here in just a minute. But this is exactly how it should come out of the box. Rear toe is non-adjustable, so when it comes down to it, like I said, we'll talk about it. But I will post these pictures here later so everybody can see them. Okay, so the rear toe from the factory is built in with 2.5 degrees of toe in. It's non-adjustable, so you can't get rid of it. It does, whether people want to think it or not, a lot of people think that you want it to be 0, but you don't. You want a little bit of toe in. That way it also improves the stability of the car. If you change your rear arms and you want to go to 0, just fill it out for yourself. Just know that when you go to 0, it can make the car, you know, feel loose or real wandery with the rear end. So you'll always be fighting the car. Right? Leave it stock about 2.5 in. If you want to go to 2, if you put some Pim Burton arms on it, or some Custom Works arms. Custom Works makes arms for the Slash. Just play with it and see what you feel comfortable with. But out of the box is probably the best you're going to get on it. So, like I said, rear toe, no change. Leave it the way it is out of the box. Camber. Camber is another good subject. That on camber, when you're running off-road, we run some negative camber, which, okay, positive camber's out, 0 camber straight up and down, negative camber's in. We run negative camber on off-road because your negative camber actually helps the car rotate around the corners. In this, we're not worried about the car rotating around the corners. We want it going as straight as possible. If you run 0 degree camber, which is how it should come out of the box, now you may have to adjust it, but if you run 0 degrees camber, you get the biggest contact patch of the tire on the ground. Now, if you're running tires that tend to balloon, and they may balloon off to the side if it's glued inappropriate, or I'm sorry, if it's not correctly glued and the tire balloons off to the side, you can put some kind of liquid. I generally use Simple Green because it's also a cleaning agent. Put some on some concrete, set your car on it, give your car a little bit of throttle. Don't sit there and burn off the tires, but just get your tires moving. And you can look on the tire and you can see where your contact patch is. If your contact patch is off to the side, change the toe on that tire, pull the contact patch up. But generally 0 degrees should get you exactly where you need to be. One thing you may do is you can add a little bit of positive camber so that when your car is under power going down the strip, the camber comes out to be 0. Because if you take a car and set it on the ground with ride height, weight, with the body, battery, everything like you're going to race it, it should be 0. And when you mash down on that car, if you notice, the camber's actually going to change where it's not 0 anymore. So you can put some positive camber outwards on top of the wheels. That way when you push down on the car, it'll come down, your tires will do this, they'll straighten. That's a good thing to consider. It's a good thing to maybe try, especially when you're running down the track. Again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip the camera around again just to give you a representation of what I'm talking about. That shows you a good representation. Positive camber, 0 camber, negative camber. You want, when the car is under power under load, you want it to be 0 camber, which should get you the best contact patch on the tires you can get. So now we're going to jump into playing with some preload, or preventing pulling with preload, to prevent the car from pulling hard to the left, pulling hard to the right. So whenever you take off down the track and your car is pulling to the right or left, let's just say your car is pulling to the left. If my car is pulling to the left, then I'm going to add preload in the left-hand rear shock. What that does is it pushes harder on the left rear to drive the car more straight. Now, vice versa, you can also, if it's pulling to the left, you can also take one preload shim out of the right, which is virtually the same thing as putting one in the left. You're trying to get both tires to drive evenly, that way it drives straight. One thing you got to remember is this is one of those changes that if you make a change, you need to make 3 or 4 passes afterwards to actually see if this change does anything to the car. Because generally a lot of times someone takes off and the car goes radically left. Now it may do it one time, and when it does it one time, some people are like, oh, we got to chunk preload in. So they chunk a bunch of preload in the left, and then next thing you know, the car's driving right every time. There's no way to get out of it. So it's one of them small little experiments to try. Start with small preloads, and you can work up, or if you got a major issue, you can use large preloads. So this is showing that the car is driving to the right, so we're adding some preload to the right to straighten it out, or we're taking preload out of the left to straighten it up. Just remember, if your car goes right, add right. If your car goes left, add left. Whichever direction the car is going, add to it, or remove from the opposite side. All right, so that takes care of your preload. Preload's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory as far as with that picture. But now we'll get into a little bit of the shock side of it. Dampening, shock damper. A dampening force is pretty much, it's created by the piston displacing oil in the cylinder. So if you remove a spring from a shock and you move the shock shaft in and out, you can feel the dampening force from the inside by how much it's slowing down the shock oil. And to alter that amount of dampening, sometimes you change a piston. And some pistons have 3 holes, 4 holes, but most likely you're going to see a 2-hole piston. And the larger the piston, the less dampening force it has. It allows the shock to move freer and faster. The smaller the piston, or the smaller hole in the piston, the more dampening force it has. Now, you do have to remember that when you're messing with your dampening, if you start changing pistons, there is the possibility that you could always over dampen a spring, which in drag racing it's not that big of an issue, but you can run across it. That's if you have a spring that is too light for too small of a hole of piston, and it can, when you start to dampen it, it doesn't have time for the spring actually to pull the shock shaft all the way back out before it's already trying to go in again. So you just got to make sure that you don't over dampen, which can cause your shock to not bind up but not extend fully. That can also, you can change that by your oil viscosity. A lot of people, everybody should probably know this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways. Viscosity refers to the resistance of flow of a fluid. The higher the fluid's viscosity, the more resistance it has. And if you fill a shock oil, or if you fill a shock, with a higher viscosity oil, it will increase the dampening force, but vice versa if you use a lower viscosity oil. I'll show you a picture of a shock. The inside of a shock. You've got your hole in your piston here, and what goes down or up, it's how fast it can displace the oil from one side to the other of the shock is your dampening, is how well it dampens. Last thing we'll really discuss is talking about spring rates. Again, your spring rate is the measure of a spring stiffness. The greater number, the stiffer the spring. Generally, a lot of times they're referred to as in pounds. And remember, spring rate, if you want to over dampen a shock, if you put a smaller piston in there, you're going to have to go up with your spring. Put a larger piston in there, you can go down with your spring, because you don't want it. Large piston, big spring, you'll get real springy effect. Small piston, big spring, it'll dampen a little bit better, and it can dampen faster or slower depending on the spring versus the piston. We're gonna work with ride height here, and this is a really good diagram. So a lot of people always say, oh, my drive shafts need to be level or above level. Above level is, as you can see, it's for rough, low grip, which is not going to go, yeah, Bob, it's almost exactly similar to the Camaro. And if you look at the Camaro out of the box, you're sitting the exact same way, even with this ride height deal. But rough, low grip, this is what you're gonna do if you're playing off-road. Arms level is great for stability, but yes, sir, regarding the shocks, yes, sir. The arms level are great for stability, but you still have a downward angle of your drive shafts, which actually helps to loosen the car up a little bit. You don't want anything to do with that. Your drive shafts level, that A lot of people try to get the drive shafts level. I used to always believe that was the best thing you could ever do. The best thing since sliced bread, you know. Turns out it's not. Now, if you are running on a crap surface, you can move your drive shafts up. It's going to raise your ride height, which is part of it, but you can move your drive shafts to a level position, which can give you more forward drive if you get on a slicker surface. Now, this one over here is virtually how they come out of the box. I mean, they're slim, drive shafts are below level. They're designed for good high bite, smooth surfaces, but you can always refer to this. As the surface gets worse, you go to here. Don't ever go to here on drag racing, unless you're drag racing in sand. But just you can move your way up. Now that is going to raise your ride height, and your ride height is going to change your roll center, which changes how the car acts if you do have to put steering inputs into the car. I'll back this picture out and see what else I have here. Just simple, quick reference stuff. This tells you pretty much how to check your ride height. We're not worried about the body on this, but the ride height is from the ground to the bottom of the chassis. There's all kinds of companies that have all kinds of different ride height gauges out there. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. You just go look for a ride height gauge. Most of them are plastic. They get the job done, no problem. Camber. If you don't have something to measure rear camber, here it is again. Just chunk you a paint cam beside it. Slide paint cam against the tire. If it touches top and bottom, you're sitting at 0 camber. But like I said, when you mash the car down, this tire is actually, this link here doesn't technically get shorter, but it ends up being shorter, which pulls the top of the wheel in. Now you can space this link up on the inside, maybe not on the slash because of the way it's set up, but generally on most you could space it up on the inside, and when this comes up, it will carry less camber. Preload guide, I was telling y'all I had that on there. This, I'll post it up there. It's got everything in it. Stock settings, this is the way they come. You know, slight pull, strong pull. It tells you what you could change or what to look at on both sides. Shock pistons, I was talking about the different pistons. These are 2-hole one. Okay, so when someone tells you a piston, they say 2-hole 1.6. So 2-hole 1.6, 2-hole 1.5, 2-hole 1.5. It could be a 3-hole, 4-hole 1.4. It's whatever you're running. This 2-hole 1.6 is probably the most common piston you'll find in any RC vehicle. We did the toe. We talked about that. Talked about the pull, camber angles. Here's a simple one. Just tells you how to fix your front toe right here. Toe in, toe out. You square them up. Generally get them up straight.